Patrick Johnston from the Province and Post Media joins us on Thursdays. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, I just want to, give a shout out to Blake's left turns. When he's driving, that's what I like to see the most.
Exquisite. We just grabbed a graphic.
He is on it. If that left turn arrow goes green, Blake's reaction time is F1 worthy.
Like, I wish we could pull people over and lecture them. Like, do you think city engineers wanted just 2 cars to make it through that left turn light? Do you think that's what they had in mind on that intersection?
3-turn minimum.
I'm just going to let you two just go. You guys are cooking. I'm great.
Good.
Road trip. I'm not on the road trip, but I'm still pretty good.
Yeah, well, this is the road trip to be on, so you missed it.
Well, usually you want this one. It is in January, the last couple of years.
Right.
That's the nice.
That's better, exactly.
Also, don't talk about that with my family. So.
Right. We'll start with Conor Garland. I want to get to Myers here in a second.
Lots
there.
Yeah.
But I want to get to Conor Garland just because it would appear there's some urgency with the Vancouver Canucks. We talked about it on yesterday's show. When you see him do that breeze by and not eat the puck on the Zamula shot for the first Flyers goal, like, you do have to wonder if your upper management, like, okay, is this guy done bleeding for us? He wants out. It's pretty clear. And there seems to be a lot of smoke with the insiders, and not to mention a fair number of teams here. Are we not surprised at how many teams are being connected to Conor Garland here? So what's your sense on where the Garland file goes and how quickly the Garland file goes?
Yeah, I was talking to a couple of people that pay attention to this kind of stuff, and certainly, the feeling is that this is where it's gonna go. It's not an accident that we're hearing all this noise. And exactly that. You mentioned the flyby. You think a lot about the sort of rhetoric that Rick Tocchet is saying about what he wants from his team. I wrote a thing about neutral zone play and just went back and looked at all the things that he had told us over the last couple of weeks, and the talking points that I got from like Ian Cole and Brock Besser, and Tocchet talked a lot about the sort of not going behind the net kind of thing on a forecheck. If you're don't lose that race, like, you got to come higher than that. If it's not happening, you got to get pressure. They're trying to pressure, they're trying to force turnovers, but don't end up chasing it. And he doesn't want defense or forwards backing up. Like, he wants aggressive. And exactly that. If you're throwing flybys, that's not part of the book. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, this is a player that obviously has produced very well. And certainly his first year was a very solid player for this team. Bit of a slip last year, and then we are year 3, and it, I think, is clearly coming to an end. We'll see how long it takes. I think the team would rather go quickly. Obviously there's all the analysis of the fact that Canucks seem to be more amenable to making a deal and making it happen, which means eating salary, which isn't ideal, obviously.
Yeah. Well, that was my
follow-up. There's still 3 years to go on this deal, right? Like, it's not like this is eating it for one season. It's eating it for this year, the year after, and the year,
Yeah.
And $17 million in cash. Like, it's actually even more cash than it is cap space.
Right.
But
yeah.
But you say productive, and I can hear some Canucks fans going, "What do you mean? He hasn't been that productive." The underlying analytics have always been kind.
Well, his first season. Let me just say, his first season, nobody scored at a higher rate at even strength than Conor Garland.
His even strength numbers, yeah.
So
he was fantastic.
Does that underpin some of the interest that we're seeing? And is it too big an ask for the Canucks to want to retain money on this player and get salary cap space out of it, which seems a pretty narrow channel to run?
Well, and replace him too. You got to pay somebody in that cap spot. And what are they going to cost?
If you go way back to 2021, when the Canucks ended up getting him in, of course, the OEL trade, he was a guy that was clearly on the move.
Mm-hmm.
The Coyotes were cutting bait from every possible liability. They didn't want to pay anybody. They were asking for a late first-round pick, right? And there were a lot of teams that were interested. Now, obviously, in the end, the Canucks went over and above and cut them some cap favors and gave them a boatload of draft picks, and were willing to take Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But the value of as a standalone player was that. Now, I don't know if he is really that anymore. He's 27. He's still a very useful player, but he is not the young, sprightly 23-year-old, 24-year-old he was when they traded for him. So it makes sense. He's a player that helps your team. Certainly, if you can get him down to a $3 million player, which is essentially if they're going to retain 1.9, which I don't think is going to happen. But if you get down to a $3.5, $4 million player, even like that's a guy you can play in your second line. It's a guy that can play in your third line and bump up. Like that's sort of an insurance scorer. But there's a lot in his favor. But yeah.
But to Blake's point, so I think you either trade him, retaining money, and really get nothing back, or maybe get a draft pick back or a prospect back, and then you have the cap space. But to Blake's point, like, do you not want someone serviceable back?
Yeah.
Do you not feel like you need to replace?
Well, not necessarily in his position, but I think you want to improve your team.
Some sort of asset that improves the team.
Yeah.
And cap space seems like a narrow channel. I wonder whether it could be one or the other here.
It's a hockey version of good, quick, cheap pick 2. Right, like you're going to get someone good, but he's he could be quick, but he's not not going to be cheap. He could be good and cheap, but he's not going to be quick. Like there is an element here that all the stuff you're hearing. I mean, that's all well and good, but exactly if you want to, this is a player that at least in theory was a viable part of your lineup. You can't just dump him. I mean, okay, you've got Anthony Beauvillier in the lineup already, but. I think Anthony Beauvillier is fine as a player, but I also don't think he's Conor Garland. I mean, obviously not saying Conor Garland is a superstar, but I think Garland gives you more than Beauvillier does. So yeah, getting rid of Garland probably is going to be a step down. I just don't see how you get something back in here unless someone's moving you over their own problems. And that's,
or they do what they've done before here, guys, and they pay somebody to take away their problems. What if they just add a bunch of sugar on top here and get the full $5 million space? Would we be surprised if they peeled off a second round pick to make this happen?
I was thinking that yesterday, Blake, on my drive home. Are you telling me another second round pick is going out the door here just to alleviate the cap situation and alleviate another disgruntled?
I mean, we've seen how the Canucks value picks. The fact that they're trading late round picks. I mean, first of all, they don't have a second round pick for the coming
year. No.
But you look at the way they've been willing to move on from later round picks. I mean, that's to me the Canucks starting to recognize. If you look at some of the historical trends, there's just not a lot of value in those late rounds anymore. The guys that used to land in the 6th, 7th round, you go back, the famous ones being like Henrik Zetterberg. Martin Erat, you go back 20 some years, you could find those guys, but those guys are going in the second round now, right? And that's why second round picks still have huge value. And I think the Canucks would be very, very, very silly to get rid of another second round pick. I mean, the fact that they picked less than half the time, or that over the last decade they've used less than half their second round picks, tells you everything about this. Why this prospects pool has mostly been not very good for a very long time.
Yeah.
There's just no that there's a quality of player you find in the second round. They're not going to be your superstar, but they're going to be a very good mid-tier player. They're going to be, that's a top 4 defenseman. That's a second or third line winger. Like those are guys that help you win on value deals. And moving on from a guy like Garland and doing it because you traded your 2025 second round pick would just be so foolish.
Conversely, the report is that they retain up to $1.5 million. That's the number sort of that's been floated around, is that they'll eat up to $1 million. It's just way too much, PJ. Like by the time you got the OEL money coming on, remember, as you mentioned, 3 years left on this deal. All of a sudden, year 2 and 3 of those deals, you're taking on a lot of dead money here with the OEL money coming back on the account.
Yeah, I know exactly. And the cap goes up $4 million or whatever it is. Like
nothing to show
there's
for
your growth right there. I mean, it's just the stunning, never-ending story of this team and bad decisions coming back to home to roost. And bad original decisions, whatever you think of the subsequent decisions, but just never giving themselves a chance, despite all the talk of wanting to compete, wanting to win, wanting to, this year's going to be different. It's just a mountain of stuff, and it's just really, it's just something to behold. That if you're going to deliver, to if you're going to deliver, you got to have a plan. You can't have the no plan. You can't hope, oh, maybe this year will work out. Like, this is a cap league. The Canucks weren't the only team to start the season down a skater, and there was some reason for why they were in that position. That was not their fault. The cap has been flat, but these are constraints that have been around, and if you're going to keep lashing yourself to the deck and being unable to steer the ship, like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah.
I look forward to the documentary on the scene. Let me tell you a story about Behold, the Vancouver Canucks and the decisions that led them to this point.
Yeah. This low end, it's just one thing after another. You're right. Like the OEL deal, like two, and then the year after that, like, don't forget, it's almost $5 million, 25, 26 for 2 years.
Well, it's like the cap is going up if you get rid of Tyler Myers at the year end. We had wondered how long it would take to get this contract to its finish line. We can now see the finish line. And in fact, at the outset of this year, PJ, I think everybody was quite optimistic. Hey, he's serviceable, get to the trade deadline, liquidate, get assets back. It was also simple on paper. It seems less simple now, given what we've seen over these first few games from Tyler Myers.
It's tough to watch. Obviously caving here, like so many other Jim Benning deals, with way more fanfare than probably was necessary. He was okay his first couple of years, and as things go, as you go into your 30s, things get harder. And from a media standpoint, he's always been great to deal with. He's always got thoughts and insights to things that he's trying to help you understand what he's doing and what he sees on the team or what he thinks how things should be. But yeah, I was saying at the end of preseason, when the Canucks were actually disrupting cross ice passes on the penalty kill, and I think the jury, obviously the jury's still out on the penalty kill, but it's there's been moments of promise. But thinking back to a couple seasons ago, him and Tucker Pullman trying to kill a penalty and being completely unable to block cross ice passes, and you're just like, how are you guys on? You guys are so big. How is this a thing? And it's just not a skill he has. And now, he's slowed down, and it's just, there's stuff like that happens around him. The puck gets in his, feet, and everyone's seen it. It's tough to watch. And I think the reality probably is they're just going to have to grit and bear it and get through the season. Whether he gets scratched or not, I think that depends on the alternatives. There's not a whole lot of alternatives on the right side right now. We're going to see Mark Friedman, see what he looks like, supposedly, but similar to Joel Juleson, but maybe a little better. Juleson, of course, has been not very good to start the season. Coming into the year, I always thought they were going to have to ride Hughes and Hronek and whoever plays with them a lot, and just survive your third pair, and they're already at that point.
Except he's on the second pair.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, as a third pair, you can get by with them. It's been talking in foot, and I'll say stubbornness, not refusal, because we saw a little cameo there with Cole with you. But one of those lefties, Susie or Cole, playing the right side in the top four maybe solves your problem here. No?
Yeah. Well, I think the sort of Cole McWard factor is also in there too, right? Like, I think if they'd had their choices, I think they probably would have started the season with him in the lineup. But you're right, yeah, there are options in front of them. They could see Susie and Cole as a pair. They're not huge fans of having two lefties. I get it, but at the same time, if you're not, that's also about who should be Quinn Hughes' partner, right? If you're looking at more of a shutdown, smart, playing hard to play against kind of pair, in theory, those two work really well together. Ian Cole, I've just been so consistently impressed with his reads and his ability to anticipate. I think as his role grows as the season progresses, I do think the that's something to watch. I think it should be effective. It should be he should be a player that really does help turn the tide for this team. And yeah, I mean, Susie, we've seen once. He really has been a third pair defenseman. The Canucks think he can be a second pair defenseman. We'll see.
Well,
He's got a particular skill set, and I just don't think that matches quite with what they want.
What did you make of the Freedman-Rathbone trade?
Well, Jack Rathbone, who I always had a lot of time for, another one of those guys who's always ready and happy to talk. Good guy. Certainly a lot of skills. There was a game, and I think I've mentioned this before. There was a moment in a game late last season when he was up on that late season cameo where he found himself in the left-hand corner, behind the Canucks net, and instead of there was an aggressive play in front of him, which would involve skating and moving his feet, and instead of moving it with his feet, the moment passed, and he missed the moment, and then essentially had no play, and moved it back around behind the net to Cal Burrows, who had absolutely no play and who was left to rim it around the boards. And I remember thinking, I think that's the play right there. That is why he has struggled to survive the NHL. And then that's how it is, right? Like some of these guys are fantastic AHL players. He quite clearly is a very good AHL player. And that ability to read the game and move your feet move your head, your brain, and your feet at the same time at the speed that you need. We'll see. I mean, Pittsburgh obviously is going to be a new opportunity. We'll see how you can go. Friedman fills a need. I think I do feel like they probably watched Johnston struggle the first 3 games of the year, and went, we got or 2 games of the year, I guess it was, when they made the trade. We've got to keep looking to see if we can find a right shot guy that fits in our roster. We'll see. I mean, he's been a kind of guy that's bounced up and down between the AHL and the NHL for Pittsburgh, but proof will be in the pudding. I mean, let's try something different. Let's change it up. And
it's wishful though. There's a lot of wishing in this. I mean, this is
not
absolutely a certified NHL player.
There's nobody screaming, "Oh my God, what a win for the Vancouver Canucks!" No. It's like, here's a guy that we definitely don't need. And you move him on for a guy that Pittsburgh's kind of like, yeah, sure, we don't really need this guy. So,
it sort of feels like that, yes.
Yeah. All right. Great fucking job this week, PJ. All right.
Wow.
We got admonished for our cursing last week, so we're gonna throw one gratuitous one in there, and we'll be
Matt. Matt, you swear well.
So he thinks anyway. Yeah. Don't encourage.
I come by it honestly.
I'll take notes,
Patrick. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
This Sekeres and Price clip brought to you by
Jason.Mortgage.